By far the most common question I get when it comes to tracking properties and entities within QuickBooks Online is, can't I just use location to track property-specific transactions? The answer is yes, you can, but it's not necessarily the most optimal way to use QuickBooks Online. So let's deconstruct the pros and cons of using both class and customer to track your properties, and as I'm going to demonstrate, your entities. So here I have QuickBooks Online open on the left. I'm going to be bouncing over to the right as well. What I'm going to do is I have a completely empty balance sheet. I'm going to create a transaction to demonstrate how class and location track a little bit differently. Now, as a reminder, to set these up, one or both, we would go to Account Settings, QuickBooks Online Plus or Beyond, your advanced settings here, track classes and track locations. Now, you can see that I specifically have track locations to log as business. Somebody sees the word location, they see the word property here, and it is tempting to potentially use location to track your property-specific transactions. Again, you can, but here's one key differentiator, and I'm going to demonstrate the impact of this. Classes, we can track one to each row of a transaction, and I typically recommend you do that when you're using class to indicate a property. Location, we cannot. And the fact that we cannot is actually a positive here because it forces both sides of the transaction to take on this location label. I'm going to show you why that's so important as we get into this. Okay, so I'm going to save both of those, and we're going to use both as we demonstrate here. So I'm going to do one single journal entry to log the purchase of property, and I'm going way back in time just so this shows up on an empty balance sheet, 2010. Okay, and I'm just going to put in the purchase of a property. I'm going to use some of my accounts here for like building, closing costs, and land. Okay, and let's just say that I'm purchasing, maybe it's a $250,000 purchase. I'm going to put $225,000 toward the building, $25,000 toward the land, and then some closing costs, $7,500. Okay, now I've got business and class on my journal entry here. So I'm going to use business to be an entity. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to use this JMB Investments to be an entity, and class I'm going to do as the actual property. Okay, and now on a journal entry, there's not really an issue. I can do one single business and one single class to every line of the transaction. That becomes an issue when we use other transaction types, as I'm about to demonstrate. Let's say that I have a single loan on this whole thing. I'm just going to put it as conventional loans as a long-term liability, again, to JMB Investments 122. Let's say I have another property on my books here that is owned by a different entity. Okay, so, and all I'm doing here is just a really simple purchase to just get something on the books. Okay, so we've got, let's say this is worth a little bit more, $350, and closing costs of $12,500. Land is worth $50K, and let's say that this is a loan as well. Okay, and this is going to be owned by a different entity right here, 264 Union LLC, and I'll put that same class in here. Okay, so what we have is this journal entry. I've got no restrictions at all. It's nice and easy. I can save and close this, and I'm going to get a nice little balance sheet, and then if I want to display my columns by, let's say, businesses, I can do that, and I can do the same thing with classes. Okay. Now, what starts to become an issue is when I add an expense. Let's say that I want to use location to be my property. Well, notice here that my business or my location shows up at the top of my entry here and not at a line-by-line level. So what's very common is that we've got cash in a checking account that we spend on multiple properties. So I might spend on repairs and maintenance, okay, and I might spend on multiple properties. I can, with either customer or class, indicate those multiple properties. Now I have to indicate just one business, and that's okay. I can put just one business here, and I can deal with intercompany separately. But I don't have the ability to separate out my business here. Okay, so it's usually a better practice to have your property specific to be at the line item level, like I'm showing you right here. Okay, so I'm just going to put those in here, 150 and then 225. All right, so now what's cool about this and what's very important is where the class is being attributed. I started this entire example with a journal entry. On a journal entry, we see both sides of the transaction, right? We see the debits and the credits, and we're able to label every single side of that transaction with class and with business. But what we don't get on the expense is the same thing. So when I save and close this transaction, what you're going to see here is that the balance sheet by class is going to take on a not specified. And that can be really frustrating for us when we have that show up. It's like, what the heck? Why is there a not specified there? I certainly specified the class, but what we're seeing is that the one side of the transaction didn't have class specified. Let me show you what I mean by that. And the best way to kind of see this is to go into a transaction and go to what's called the transaction journal, or right here, the transaction journal. So when I click on the transaction journal, it's going to take this single transaction. I want you to think of this single transaction and understand that everything in QuickBooks Online is, in its essence, a journal entry in the back end, okay? These transactions just make it easier for us. This expense is an easier interface for us to work in. So I go to my transaction journal, QuickBooks will show me the journal entry it made for that single transaction. And this journal entry is very interesting. Notice 3 lines. So what we have with this single expense is the equivalent of 3 lines of a journal entry, or I've got JMB checking account, I got repairs and maintenance twice. What doesn't show by default, but I'm about to turn on, is class and business. As I turn those on, you're going to see something really interesting here. Just turn on class and business. Notice that the business has been applied to all 3 lines of the transaction. The class was only applied to those repairs and maintenance lines. Okay? It didn't know to attribute this JMB checking to a certain class. And that's very important, because when we think about potentially using class to indicate location, okay, then what we're going to miss is the ability to have a balance sheet that's really true and full. Okay, so understanding this here, this is why, see this class is blank? That's exactly why on my balance sheet here I have not specified. And at the property level, that's okay. I don't need to have a value for my checking account by property. But at the business level, I absolutely do need that. It's very important that at the business level, we don't have any not specified. And so the reason that I love using location tracking for business or entity specific tracking is because we have no choice but to attribute the entire transaction, all sides of it, every single line of it, to that specific location. There's never going to be a not specified. And that's essential. We cannot have not specified. If we had not specified, our balance sheet would never be in check. Okay, now I've certainly got some work to do here in that I've got, a negative 375. I've got spending going on from one business on properties I don't own, but I can certainly deal with that with intercompany equity. What's important to understand is this transaction journal side of things. The reason that your balance sheet might be off, the reason that you're showing a not specified by class or by customer, is because QuickBooks doesn't know that that side of the transaction, that JMB, the checking side or the credit card side, that it should be attributed to a single class. The only way it would do that is if we were tracking at the entire transaction level. And that's what happens with business or location. So that's why I'm adamant that location tracking is perfect for entity-specific tracking, having multiple entities in one single subscription. We've got a lot of videos about that advanced technique. We talk about a lot in our real estate accounting bootcamp as well. Certainly check that out. I think location is absolutely perfect for that. I think class or customer is perfect for property or project specific tracking. I'd love to know your thoughts as well. This is a question I get all the time, and we go deep in this in Real Estate Accounting Bootcamp as well. So if you'd like to check it out, we've got sign up available, and it's an amazing course end to end, showing you everything that I do within my own real estate investing business within QuickBooks Online. Let me know your comments and let me know what you'd like to see on the next video, and I'll see you there.